Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, the podcast where we uncover stories and strategies of hands-on entrepreneurs and tradespeople who are building something remarkable. Today's guest is Grant Fuellenbach, founder of Go First Consulting. Grant has spent over a decade in construction, sales, and operation, helping builders and remodels escape the feast-or-famine cycle by installing proven systems and practical AI tools that boost profitability, free up time, and give owners their freedom back. From the trenches and transformation business, his journey is full of lessons our audience can use today. Grant, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Happy to be here.
thank you. Yeah, so Grant, what was it like growing up?
Growing up,
Yeah.
um, I had a great childhood. Yeah. Let's see. Very nerdy, I guess. Both of uh, my father, he worked as a elevator repairman in San Francisco for a while, and then got into data centers after he's an engineer, and so my familiarity with like commercial construction started at an early age, you can say. Um, but yeah, I've primarily lived in Colorado my whole life, with the exception of a few short stints in different states across the U.S.
Apart from your dad, do you have any other entrepreneurs around you
Oh
uh,
yeah, yeah,
that
sure.
actually more like sharpens your ideas about entrepreneur while growing up?
Yeah, lots of friends growing up and currently are entrepreneurs, owner operators. My whole company is actually revolves around entrepreneurs. Um, we work primarily with residential design builders and remodelers. So a lot of craftsmen and people in the trades who start their own business. Um, so very, very familiar with the challenges and struggles that go into entrepreneurship.
Wow, amazing. So, looking back, Grant, what skills or value or from your childhood still guide you in business today?
Um, Curiosity, that's the number one. In terms of f- stay, you're lucky. Actually, I would say curiosity is the most important thing when it comes to really doing any amount of work. If you can stay curious around not just your workflow and the tools and everything, but the problems that you're solving and the people who you're solving those problems for, that's the where the whole saying you'll never work a day in your life, because the work that you're doing is actually just it's continuous play. You're just continuously learning new things and getting to you know just play around essentially.
Wow, wow, amazing. I think the fact that you said curiosity, it really speaks volume because I think almost every entrepreneurs I've got to interview over time that I've known of, they are curious. They are willing to know. They want to try out things, and they want to actually more like want to see what is at the end of the other side of that particular thing they're trying. So before you actually launched Go First, uh, you had different roles in sales and operation for a construction tech company. And can you share some of the job that actually shape you the most with what you do today?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a impossible question because each role I've had has taught me so many things that um, that obviously I didn't know before, whether it was degrees of conflict management, project management, sales and marketing, client acquisition. I mean, I've had, for the most part, in my career, I've had a similar title or a similar job description, which is generally around director of sales operations, director of marketing, in different technology companies. But the environment and the people that you work with and the customers that you interact with in each of those different jobs, they were all so different that, it's really, I mean, I'm grateful for every single one because of the experiences and the lessons learned and whatnot. Um, but if I had to sum it up to one, I don't think I'd be able to do it.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you very much for that. Because the reason I asked is the fact that I discovered that a whole lot of entrepreneurs before venturing into what they do, they work in other company and owing to the system and structure of that particular company, they get to learn one or two things about structure, about how to manage conflict, about project management, about a whole lot of stuff. And the reason why I actually more like brought up this particular question is the fact that a whole some of my audience are just those who actually, yeah, I want to actually start their journey when it comes to entrepreneurship, especially the blue collar entrepreneurs, and they are currently working in a particular space where sometimes they don't know how those things even fit in to us, how the ground of things actually more like come into place, and at the end of the day, how these things plays out. So what I actually intend to get from you is the fact that maybe you make reference of, okay, this particular rules, it taught me about this particular role, it speak volume about this. And so that owing to your own blueprints, they can see value in every of their journey why they are currently working at a particular place where they are working. And yeah, they will be very, very intentional why they are doing that. Not just being doing it for doing it sake, but they will be very, very intentional in maximizing it. So that is the reason why I just want to kind of if you can give example of those roles and some of those particular things he actually taught you going along while you're working with this company.
Yeah, like the role, that's kind of the benefit, right? Each role, not only did I learn something new, but the I'm continuously learning new things, and it even because of those previous roles, even to this day, right? Because I had an opportunity or an experience in, we'll just say, one of my first jobs outside of college or university was working at a food service equipment tech company. Incredibly different than what I'm doing now, but because I had that experience, that even now opens up a lot of doors in conversations with people who, a contractor might be building a commercial kitchen or you know, just given the variety of experiences I've had means I can pull from so many more
Yeah,
databases of
resource.
knowledge,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, amazing. Thank you very much, Grant. Was there a specific moment or maybe a conversation or project that made you realize that that make you realize system that we are missing link for many trade business? Why you were actually more like working in various job, you get to discover there was a system missing when it comes to trade business with those one you see around you.
Yeah. So most of my career has been around system development. It's, working with sales and marketing teams to implement or deploy new technology and to make sure that that new technology is adopted to essentially get an end result, which is usually around, higher revenue, more
Yeah,
leads, something of that nature. That's what I've done in every single job I've ever had. The is essentially change management and making something better, some type of workflow better. And when I learned, my background for the past 10 years has been generally in like commercial construction and drone software. And um, through that, I got to learn really well the challenges and insight that goes into residential construction, the houses that we live in, the you know the multi-unit apartments that are being developed everywhere, at least here in Colorado, and also the crazy challenges that go into it in terms of how hard it actually is to start a construction company and to find customers and to manage it all yourself, find subcontractors, do the projects, find the material, all of it. And I've made friends who are in this industry, and I see firsthand the challenges that they experienced, and that's really where my background in deploying systems and finding best in class tools has fit in like a key into a lock almost, in the way that, um, not only do so many of these builders need help with their back end systems and making sure their cash flow and
Yeah.
their marketing and their margins are all dialed in, but they need help managing it and making sure that their team understands it and is doing it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Grant. I think what you just make a reference of, it is more like, how will I say it now? One of the loophole when it comes to trade business, the fact that sometimes their management, their team, they don't take the same, how will I say, they don't run with the same particular goal. The owner might actually more like be running with an idea of what the company wants to encompass, and the team is even not aware about in terms of details what it actually entails, and sometimes it can be a team, but still the owner is still running like a solopreneur, just him alone. And I think the fact that I just brought it up just reminded me of all of other systems that I've come to see, and the fact that you brought it up simply means, yeah, as a team, every of those conversation has to be kind of a speaking volume to, if not, at the end of the day, you'll be running things, hoping that the teams get it, not knowing that as the leader, you're just running it all alone, as more like a solopreneur rather than as an entrepreneur managing your team. So on the flip side, what are some of the unique opportunity that young trade people have today that older generation didn't see or didn't get to
Oh,
have looking at the industry?
sure. Yeah, so in the same vein that it's never been harder to run a construction company, it's you've never had the same amount of resources that you do now.
Hmm.
We like I was born in 1991, so I'm very much a millennial, and the tools that people have at their disposal nowadays, there's never been anything like it. You have the extent of human knowledge and more at your fingertips,
Yeah.
in terms of and emphasis on the and more, because this we used to live in the age of the internet. Now we live in the age of AI, which
Yeah.
is a severe extension of that. And so when you talk about you know the advantages that someone has starting a company now, the answer is right there. The answer is, you will never have another time where there's such opportunity to utilize so much knowledge and things like vibe coding and AI, image generation, um, avatars. There's so many different capabilities that AI has nowadays, um, that there's never been anything like it.
Yeah, so true, so true. I think apart from the AI and everything, there's a whole lot of conversation around various industry that actually more like speak volume about this. Unlike before, there are some certain kind of trade and skill where there is more like in quotes trade secrets that no one gets to know about, and only a particular more like set of persons just know about it, and no one gets to know. But with podcast now, with a whole lot of tools, a whole lot of platform, you actually more like even see that people actually more like people make reference of their trade secret. What made them unique? I think the only thing is just going to be your actions and your execution that actually more like just speak volume. And the fact that we have a whole lot of AI, where these days you don't even need to kind of yeah, you might not need to, how will I say it, in terms of learning and everything. You can start out, but with those AI and everything, it will make you more competent in terms of putting things in places and making reference of them, using them more. That in a way that sometimes you might not really have to depend on as much as you are going to depend on some persons to actually manage a whole lot of stuff, but it reduce the burden to a particular level compared to before now, passing through some of the rigorous access and doing some of those mundane things while trying to build the structures. We speak volume. Yeah, thank you so much. So you often talk about feast or farming cycles in your construction. What does it look like in real life, and why is that such a trap?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, feast or famine, what I mean by that is, and a lot of contractors and people in the trades will resonate with this, it's this cycle of having so much project or so much revenue coming in terms of your project backlog that um, you almost don't know what to do because you're fat and happy, right? As another way of saying it, you have the next 6 to 12 months dialed in with project after project, and you have your calendar saturated. The problem, though, is what happens when you run into the other end of that coin, the other face of that coin, which is a famine, which happens when you see a recession or inflation goes up or tariffs go up or anything like that, where homeowners generally tighten the purse strings a little bit. They keep their funds a little bit closer to their chest. They might hold off on a remodel or an extension of an ADU or even a project like aging in place because they're uncertain of the future. And generally, that's what most contractors will find themselves in is, times of great project volume and then times where it's hard to get even a single phone call for a month or a week or whatever it is. Um, and there's the biggest problem that comes with that, the number one problem that comes with that is the inability to forecast when you don't know how much revenue your company is making and what your cash flow actually looks like for the next 3 months, it makes payroll very hard. It makes paying your bills very hard.
Hmm.
It makes paying for new software that you need to grow your company very hard. And so that is in a nutshell, that is the enemy that my company tries to fight. That is the challenge that every system, every product, every single workflow that we work in, our number one goal is to help stabilize the turn that super reactive nature of feast or famine into something that is predictable and something that you can actually be proactive on.
Wow, this is so amazing. I feel more like this the solution to this particular problem is going to speak volume when it comes to every entrepreneur you see in various business. Because sometimes I think I was discussing with a friend of mine the other day that a whole lot about entrepreneurs, especially those that deal with service based that offer service sometimes. The reason why they are stuck, or sometimes the reason why it seems there is no progress when it comes to their company, when it comes to their building, is the fact that they can't predict what's not even 3 months. 3 months is even far. What a month time could actually hold, because sometimes they are living from what clients just get to kind of about couples of projects they have handy. Which sometimes some of them is not even more than a month. Some are just 2 months, and sometimes the biggest problem is it. In fact, it's as though their business rise and fall on the fact that if there is no call tomorrow morning, they're out of business. If there is call, they're happy. And the next 2, 3 days, if there's no call, they're wondering, should I go back to employment? So, which it's really, really more like a big problem. I think if they can be tackled, almost every service business and to a certain level wouldn't complain of hiring staff and managing team being very confident, because sometimes these are the more like the areas that, yeah, more like a nightmare. Because for me, it's currently actually more like still battle with that, being that I run more like an industrial clinic. And owing to that fact, I have a team that I work with. But being that I started about I think about 2 years ago, and the workflow that I got, sometimes they are not that really much. That in a way, I most of my staff, they are just contract staff. So it's more like when there's job, I just on a contract basis we execute the job. And I feel more like if there is a consistency of this particular thing, it's easier to build team, it's easier to build culture. And the fact that you make reference to, you actually get solve that particular problem. I'm even more interested about this conversation so that we'll find a way around it and work out things. Yeah, thank you. So you combine proving system with practical AI. Could you give us an example of a system AI tools that make a common construction process way more efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you an example that is applicable for anyone listening,
Yeah.
simply because it's currently free. It's a tool that Google released, I want to say, a year and a half ago, and it's called Notebook LM. If you're not familiar with it, it's unlike ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, which are LLMs, so large language models. Notebook LM falls into a category that is RAG. It's retrieval augmented generation. And essentially, the way that it's different, though, is where ChatGPT, you can upload a document or a PDF or a link into a chat and say, use this in your answer. It will still pull from sources that are outside of the one that you told it to. It will pull from different websites, will pull from its own knowledge base or its context. And so you get higher degrees of hallucinations, right? Answers that are incorrect or just kind of made up. Notebook LM, though, doesn't do that because it will only pull answers from the sources that you tell it to. So where this is, and it's pretty remarkable in its own right that it will do that. But the benefit is, if you can get a little creative with it, is you can upload a full YouTube library on a certain topic and ask it, teach me, best practices around, like a big one in my world with residential construction is WIPA, which is work in progress adjustment accounting, um, which is really complex if you think about it. And generally, what you can do is you can go on YouTube, find every video that's about that topic, put it into a notebook, and teach yourself or teach anyone on your team that everything about that topic in no time and with no cost.
Wow. This is amazing. Like, I feel with this particular tool, you just make reference of it's easier to be an entrepreneur, being that you can just come up with a particular day. Yeah, I want to learn this, and in a week, 2 weeks time, you have a body of knowledge that someone will almost be wondering how did he get from this A to Z without.
Yeah.
Wow, this is amazing. Yeah, thank you for this particular tool. I think it's going to help a whole lot of our entrepreneur who are still stuck and looking forward to way to actually learn more and find different ways to actually engage of their team and to train them very well. So you have developed something called our shock and wow sales package. What is the idea behind it, and how does it help builders win better projects without competing on price?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, what a shock and wow, or really just a clean professional proposal does as a contractor, it, it it gives you essentially dividends when you're presenting or when you're working with a potential client or a homeowner. Most contractors who, well, I'll just set the stage in the US. When, let's say, I want to have my deck remodeled or redone, generally the way that I need to go about that is I'll measure it, I'll have an idea of what I want in a budget in my head, and then I'll need to go on House or Facebook, or ask friends and family for recommendations for a contractor, or I'll just go on Google and say best builder, best deck builder near me, and generally I'll have a quick conversation with that person, and then they'll have to come out to my house. So essentially, I'm inviting a stranger to come to my
Yeah.
house to talk about money, which is a weird thing. Like, as a kid, you're taught don't talk to strangers, and it's impolite to talk about money. And now I'm inviting a stranger into my house to talk about money, which is a weird. And
Yeah.
most contractors don't really acknowledge that. They don't really, it's, I know it's a pain to drive out to different locations and to submit bids, but most contractors don't take the time to actually, make their documents, their proposals, their presentations professional and to really stand behind their brand. Most look like this. It's a piece of paper with some writing on it. Maybe it has a number. It's, for lack of a better term, it's half-assed. Um, and it's not memorable to a client who, remember, you are in their home, you are in their intimate space. They've invited you in. The least you can do is actually dedicate some time and leave behind something that is professional and that you actually are proud to stand behind. And that's really where a shock and wow sales proposal comes in. Is it's something that you want to be memorable. You want to blow the minds of your
Yeah.
customers. You want to have them impressed, and you do that through different ways. One of them is by really putting time and dedication towards the design, the look and the feel of your price and the product that you want to actually stand behind.
Yeah, yeah, wow, wow, wow. This actually speak volume because I think when it comes to more like a whole lot about I think a particular platform where I was learning industrial cleaning, I think when I just started out and the trainer was making reference of how they actually bid for project and what you just said now actually speak a whole lot of volumes. And I think one of them she was making reference of the fact that they reach out to a particular project and everybody was submitting bid in respect of it. A whole lot of persons make their own quotation and they did theirs. And when they gave them the job, she later asked more like, why was I more like the particular person that was single-handedly picked for this particular project who get the bidding? And they were like, when it comes to the approach, when it comes to the execution, when it comes to a whole lot of things that the client didn't know about, that the proposal she submitted walk them through more like step to step on achieving that particular result. That it's in fact is her own bidding was way, way, way more higher than what the other person's actually more like the bidding that they actually submit. It was the fact that you actually more like walk them through this process and there's a way you actually more like put in some thoughts and actually more like drafting a proposal. You almost become intimate with the proposed client even without you being in their space before that. The level you actually put into it, they almost see you as more like a friend and a colleague and feel safe with you to actually even discuss more further compared to when you just draft it out. It just seems that it's as though you're just starting out. You don't even know much about your industry. Yeah, it's this is just what like just bring you back into it and it's really amazing. Yeah, thank you, Grant.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So after doing your 10-point diagnostic for so many builders, what is one profit link you see almost every time, and how can someone plug into it fast?
Yeah. I would say the number one thing that trends across every single company we've seen who submits the diagnostic is a challenge when it comes to creating SOPs or standard operating procedures. So, sharing information, sharing best practices, really, in your business. Well, as a contractor, as a builder, really anyone in the trades, the number one way to scale your company is by sharing the best practice, sharing the best workflow, and exactly how you want someone to do something. And most companies, to be honest, suck at it. Most companies have terrible training, terrible onboarding, terrible knowledge transfer. In fact, most of the time it's using a term called tribal knowledge, which is if you're new into a field, you could be an electrician, a plumber, or an accountant for that matter. Most of the time, your manager will, if you're starting at a new company, will just say, "Oh, that person actually knows what they've been doing. They've been here for X number of years. Just go shadow them. Just go sit with them." That's terrible because not only is that person taking being taken away from their role and responsibilities, but just because they've been with the company for a long period of time and they're tenured doesn't mean they've adopted the best practice. It doesn't mean that they are the go-to expert for all things that surround your role. And that is, in terms of scaling a service-based company, there's so much risk that goes into that. Not just because the person who's new might not absorb, all the tips and tricks and best practices um, when it comes to their work, but because of the ripple effect of that. The person who comes after, it's kind of playing telephone, if you've ever played that, where someone says a word or a sentence to someone else and then they try and repeat it and again and again and again, and after 5 or 10 people, totally different
Yes.
sentence. It's a totally different story. Where an SOP comes in, though, or really a standard operating practice, is you streamline that. You actually have a documented record of a best practice. You can really gamify it, so you can make sure that everyone is following that practice. Everyone is up to date on it. They know how to use it, how to incorporate it into their workload, and you can iterate on it, which is the best part. When that thing that used to be a best practice, that SOP, when that gets outdated, you can easily adapt to it. You can easily update it and share that document or share that video to everyone on your team and make sure that they're trained on it. Where
Yeah.
the system will actually do the training for you. That's the coolest part. Is you're eliminating risk, you're enhancing your team's workflow, and you're just making life easier for all
Yeah.
parties.
Yeah. This is actually amazing because sometimes working as a team, there should be a particular goal that you're trying to achieve, and everyone should be carried along. And I think over time, more like me working with them, I think this is more like when it comes to the defect sometimes for a service business that is just starting out. Most times, Mr. A does a different thing from Mr. B on how the result is being achieved. And at the end of the day, when a company is running and there is no more like a standard way of what is expected from a particular job as far after it's been done, being that there is no SOP, it becomes so very, very more like demanding, so actually more like you can't even say more in reference of the integrity of the company and everything, being that there is no more like a standard procedure, there is no expected outcome. Everybody just does what they feel is right, and it's that very way you hire, and the person you even hire doesn't even know what their job description is to a particular length, which actually more like leave them confused and do a particular job that is shabby, being that they don't know what is expected. Yeah, thank you. So a lot of our trade persons hear AI and get intimidated. What are 2 to 3 years beginner friendly tools they can try this week to save hours of their time?
Yeah. So Notebook LM is incredibly beginner friendly. You can take, again, any type of resource. Could be a PDF, a transcript from a meeting, could the show notes from today's meeting. I could take those, put those into a notebook, and then be able to reference all the things that we talked about.
Wow.
I could take images, videos, of course. Um, there's the way that I like to go about it, though, is, so my company, we revolve around 6 core modules, 6 core
Yeah.
topics that we generally work off of. So marketing and lead flow is one, sales and deal management is another, and another is like team development and subcontractor management. Each one of those I dedicate a notebook to. So each one of those has a knowledge bank of the best practices, not just for me, but from people who are much, much smarter than I am. And I put those marketing best practices and the
Yeah.
sales best practices into a notebook. And then I teach people how to use the notebook to create study guides and content calendars and SOPs.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us, Grant.
Of
So
course.
for a small trader or business owner who want to grow into a true CEO role, what is the very first mindset shift that they need to make?
That's a good question. The first mindset is stop focusing on your skill set in terms of how you think you can provide value, and start focusing on learning as much about your customer's world as possible. Uh, I've heard this, I'm going to butcher this quote, and I don't even know if it's a quote, but basically, customers don't care about you. They don't care about your service or the product or your brand or anything like that. The only thing that they actually care about is what you're going to do for them or how your service or your product or whatever it is benefits them. And more specifically, does it help them with time? Does it help them make more money? Does it help them reduce risk? Or does it make them look good? Those are really the four categories that anyone can.
Yeah.
Those are the only things that really anybody cares about. And start to think about that. Start to think about the problems that you want to solve, the impact that you're going to have or that you want to have, and forget pricing for a second, forget your features and your value adds and all that other stuff, and just focus on what is the actual problem that I'm good at and that I can solve for someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. I think sometimes it's easy to get overwhelmed with your skill set and your pricing and some whole lot of things being that you're just starting out. And I think the fact that you just make reference of being customer centric, getting to know what your customer need, and it's actually key because in the first place, that's what even brought you to business. Without your customer, you are just more like you just have some, yeah. Because sometimes I just sit there and imagine that if there is no customer at the end of the day, you can't even call it a skill, being that you can't able to offer value and so well, like, you have to be thinking about the end point of how do they actually get to solve their problem, what are the problem, what are the nature of our people in the space, who are my customer like, and how do they want their job done, which actually speak volume. So looking at 3 years ahead, how do you see AI system are changing the trade industries? And what is one thing trade people must start doing now to stay competitive as AI keep getting better every now and then?
Yeah. So I think for the most part, a lot of people in the trades and business owners across the industries, from what I've seen, people are barely touching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how AI can help them. People are primarily making pretty photos, maybe a cool video here and there, um, maybe doing some copywriting or writing an essay or, just maybe doing a blog post. But in terms of the true application of AI and the true value that it can have, it extends so far beyond just an image or a video, a 5-second video. There's so many different capabilities in terms of being able to build your own tools. Like vibe coding is such an interesting and insightful thing. Being able to the SOP dilemma or issue I mentioned before, being able to create your own SOP engine where you have a way of documenting your best practice, and then that gets stored in a certain format that fits your needs, your requirements. And again, you can gamify it or make sure everyone who needs to is well versed on that, understands it, and then anytime there's an iteration, AI can make the iteration and then also send out a notice saying, hey, this thing's been changed. Everyone needs to, learn the new thing. Um, so the way that I see AI evolving, it's not so much. I mean, every 6 hours it seems like some new AI tools released or some new groundbreaking thing is happening. Um, and I don't think that speed is going to slow down. I don't think that's going to change. And the adoption rate, I think there's almost 3 degrees. There's people who are scared of it and who
Yeah.
don't know. They might dabble in ChatGPT, maybe. There's people who, um, use ChatGPT or Gemini to cheat on a test or do a blog post or whatever. But then there's and to create some imagery or maybe a workflow here and there. But then there's a third degree of people who have fully adopted it and who incorporate it into their full workflow in terms of creating custom GPTs, creating custom gems, creating, utilizing MCP, which is just a new framework of having a custom GPT really pull from different tool sets. Um, and I forget who said it. I think forget the guy's name. Whoever's the CEO of OpenAI, but he said, I think like 6 months ago, that he believes in the next few years we'll see the first solopreneur billionaire. And I keep that in the back of my mind because I'm like, I want to be that person. Also, um,
Yeah.
realistically, it probably won't be me. It will be, it'll be someone who's much more versed in AI than I am.
Yeah, yeah. So true, so true. And I think it is a bit confusing too, because sometimes running your business as an entrepreneur can be so overwhelming when it comes to team management and the fact that most of what we do sometimes revolve around having people and having to work with a whole lot of different partners. I think this is more like an encouragement so that as much as you are doing your handy trades and the whole of handy stuff, every now and then, being that every 6 hours new AI is being released, we have to kind of put our face out there to actually learn what is actually evolving with time and to know when to actually more like leave some certain tasks to AI. And yeah, because I just feel more like from what you just said now, it simply means that at the end of the day, it's going to be those who actually try out those tools, who put themselves out there, that will become a significant person of influence when they come to a particular level of feed. It might be technical, but being that they've actually adopted it and they have been doing it for long, they will not be more like the key leaders compared to those who actually run it handy, who didn't get to kind of apply many of those AI that is actually coming into place. They will be left out. So this is more like, as much as an encouragement, it's still more like a threat to that you have to catch up. Not just not just be more like living out things and yeah, being so reluctant, thinking that AI is not going to kind of take off our job. Actually, I believe it might not actually take out our job, but I feel it's with time is going to, or more like, what is going to be your take? Do you feel AI can actually more like, do you feel AI will actually more like take out those handy jobs? And yeah, I know over time it will, but if I should more like, okay, let me just ask Grant, how long do you think is going to come into being AI more like taking out some handy job, especially for the blue collar entrepreneurs from your own end?
I honestly think the blue collar space is safe for a while. I do. I think that the real it's kind of like, on the internet you've probably seen like Boston Dynamics, some of their robotics like Atlas or Spot. The 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 software is always going to be cheaper to execute and maintain than any hardware, and the cost of deploying a robot, an actual real life
Yeah,
robot, to do, to install an outlet or to build a
yeah,
deck, it's not just a robot. It's, all the hardware that goes into that thing, all the manufacturing that is needed to build it, to
yeah, to
maintain
be
it,
there.
but then also the software that goes into not just teaching that thing, oh, here's what a nail is or what a screw is, and
Yeah,
here's a screw gun, and how do you combine the two,
come on.
but also, just the body mechanics and physics that are needed to go into it.
Yeah,
It's, I mean, I'm excited for when that happens. I'm excited for when robotics become more mainstream because there's so much ridiculous value that we will get from that. But realistically, I don't see it scaling or speeding up nearly to the same degree that softwares like OpenAI and
Yeah,
Gemini, all these are taking off.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you so much. I think that actually more like speak volume to it because a lot of blue collar entrepreneur job, how will I say it? There's a whole lot of system in place to actually get a whole lot of them, and experience actually speak volume in the execution and a whole lot about the framing. But from what you just said, which simply means that getting to know more about those some little setup, getting to know some of those tools so that you could do some of those, how will I say it? Those basic parts can actually more like help one a whole lot when it comes to executing those jobs. Because sometimes those meta model trying to manage project, just doing it the usual way they usually do it, sometimes can be very, very tiring compared to the other basic one. I feel if every blue collar entrepreneurs get to learn some of those particular basic system, it will help them greatly and it's going to position them handling more job and actually more like putting a whole lot of system in place to get more job and get better things done other than just staying out hoping that it's not going to take out their job. Yeah, thank you, Grant. So, Grant, how maybe, tell us about your business. Tell us about what you do, so that my audience, can actually learn more about you and do business with you.
Sure, absolutely. So, like I said, we work primarily with builders, remodelers, and contractors, helping to implement those tools and workflows so you can have, consistent SOPs that you can trust, that where everyone on your team is following the same workflow, the best practice, and
Yeah,
that, that's just one example of different tools that we have. The Like I said, the 6 modules that we follow, we first start with a diagnostic. We first try and get a deeper understanding of where your company is at in terms of what tools are you working with, what does your org chart look like, who's your clientele, what types of projects do you take on, what is your ultimate vision for the next year of your company. And through that, we actually take that report and do essentially a deep dive into it, and we start to understand the risks. We start to understand the gaps between where you're at now in your current state and where you want to be, or rather where you need to be in order to hit your goals, whether those are revenue goals or
yeah,
size growth goals or profitability goals. Um, and through that risk analysis, we get a better understanding of where we can fit in. We get a better understanding of the way that I like to think about it is a diagnostic is
yeah,
basically a CarMax. If you went to go and buy a car here in the States, you probably would get a report that shows like mileage, all the engine work that's been done on it, the estimated value, all of that. That's essentially what our diagnostic is it's a full report of your current business and the risks, the red flags that are in it. Where we work is we open up the hood and we start to replace some of the outdated components in your engine with more practical, more maybe AI powered um, parts, right? So your engine is running faster, it's running more efficiently, you're getting more bang for your buck when you drive your car. And then the third component, once we've replaced a lot of these modules, is what I call the Builder Academy. And that's essentially a roadmap that helps you continue to replace outdated workflows and tools and systems and replace those with more streamlined ones over time. And the way that I like to think of that one is essentially we're just putting in better fuel. We're continuously improving your engine, but we're also improving the fuel that feeds that engine.
amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. I think you just make reference of this again. I just remember how you answer the feast and famine, and yeah, it just reminds me of a whole lot of stuff. Being that it's as though there's a rainy days and also there is uh so it actually speaks volume, and the fact that you actually come up with an industry that gets to solve this particular problem really speak volume, being that if every entrepreneurs can get this figure out, I think it's easier to actually scale get a whole lot of team employed, uh, with the SOP, and get it running and running smoothly. Yeah, thank you so much for this particular conversation. It has really been actually been amazing having you on the show.
Ah, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm happy to be
Yeah,
here.
yeah, Grant, this conversation has been loaded with value from your early stories to actionable step our listener can take right now. For anyone who wants to learn more, you can visit beyondthebid.com and subscribe to Grant's free 5-minute newsletter, trusted by over 100,000 builders and contractors. Grant, thank you for joining us, and to our listener, remember in the trade, skill build the work, but system build the future. See you in the next time on the Aro Benaiah Show. Once again, good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Aro.